Hello guys, in this video we are gonna see page number 91 which is higher resolve. I think it's part 4. Okay, so the aeroplane had gone sailing merrily by the field at a speed of Mach 3. By the time he rolled into a blank, pulled up the angle attack and started to turn back in a northeasterly direction towards Edwards. Armstrong found himself approaching Pasadena. Subsequent Edwards' load had Neil flying as far south as Rose Bowl, but Neil was 45 miles south of the Edwards, though still about 1 lakh feet. Downwards visibility was very limited, so Neil did not know how far he was. He was nowhere close to the Rose Bowl. It wasn't clear at the time I made turn whether I would be able to get back to Edwards. That wasn't a great concern to me because there were other dry lakes available. My easiest choice was to land at a lake called E.I. Mirage, and I could get easily there. The only other alternative at the point would have been Palomine Municipal Airport, and I didn't want to get into their traffic pattern. So Armstrong committed himself to trying for Edwards. After I got on the northbound track of Edwards, it was clear that I was going to be able to try to go in. I'd have to make a straight in. Armstrong X-15 April 20, 1962 established X-15 program records for the longest endurance 12:28:07 and the longest distance 350 miles ground track. Local Edwards lore had Neil trekking down amid the Joshua trees as he made his landing on the southern tip of the Rogers Dry Lake. In fact, the Joshua trees were passing above Neil. Fellow NASA pilot Bruce Betson was situated on the North Lake bed, waiting to the second up locator flares. Neil was supposed to land on the runway 18 on the North Lake bed. Peterson related, then I heard on the radio that he was going to the South Lake, so I got my vehicle and I must have been doing in 100 miles per hour. Racing down that lake bed to see if I could get to the South Lake bed and throw some flares. I watched him coming in and I knew he was close to the edge of the lake. People who were not even at Edwards on April 20 came to believe that Armstrong made it back by the skin of his teeth. NASA pilot Bill Dana, who was to fly the X-15 in 16 times, had taken an F-104 to Albuquerque, New Mexico that day. But I sure about it when I got back. Air Force test pilot P.T. Knight did not see any of the flight either, but I heard about it when fellow pilots started teasing Neil for his record cross county flight. We thought that it was a funny time at the time to bounce back and get into the thin air where you can't turn. In the thin turn where you can't turn was made by the 16th of the teeth, and into the thin air where you can't turn it was not too bright. Major Bob White, who was flying chase for Armstrong in an F-100, admitted that he kind of giggled over it A little bit. I never did discuss the overshoot with Neil because it might have been a little embarrassing when the report of the flight went to Washington. That what Neil did sounded like a screw up to NASA's official who read it, including Brian Holmes, director of Office of Manned Spaceflight. I just assumed that was because Holmes really didn't understand. Neil felt he didn't have any technical knowledge of the problem involved, and NASA officials who read it, including Brian Holmes, director of the Office of Manned Spaceflight, I just assumed that was because of Holmes really didn't understand. Neil felt he didn't have any technical knowledge of the problem involved. Armstrong would later explain, it might have been well advised for me to think, well, if the G-lightning isn't kicking me in, I am not going to push it. I leave that to the next of the flight and try again. Typically, Armstrong regarded his famous overshoot to Pasadena as a learning thing. Just 4 days after his X-15 overshoot, Armstrong was involved in a second incident, indicating that currents that may have temporarily affected his job performance. On April 24, Armstrong and Chuck Yeager made their only ever flight together. The X-15 flight plan was necessitated emergency landing sites all along the trajectory. One of the farthest flung was Smith Ranch Dairy Lake, located some 380 miles due north of the Edwards. Conditions on a dry lake bed needed to be carefully checked out, especially during the wet winter season. Teams of inspectors would walk the lake bed, dropping in the 6-inch diameter lead balls from a height of 5 feet. Measuring the diameter of the depressions made by the balls of the comparing them to the measurements that had been made on a film usable lake bed, the inspectors determined whether the ground would support the 15-ton of weight of the X-15. The winter of 1962 was a particularly wet one in the western desert. Many roads leading to and from the Edwards were closed, and very little flying took place. On Monday, April 23, NASA's Joe Walker took an F-104 up to Smith Ranch Dry Lake to check out for a possible emergency use by X-15-1, which Walker was scheduled to fly down from the Mud Lake. The NASA R-4D Goonie bird flown by Jack McKay was Bruce Peterson reported that day that Smith Ranch might be sufficiently dry to support a landing. Paul Bike and the right head of the FRC wanted to be absolutely sure of the condition of Smith Ranch Dry Lake for Walker flight. On the 24th, after White X-15's 2 flight was cancelled due to clouds, Bike made a call to the Colonel Chuck Yeager, the commander of the aerospace research pilot at Edwards, and who also incidentally had been co-piloting the launch B-52 just that morning. According to Yeager, he told Beagle the lake bed was too wet, but that he would attempt a landing if Armstrong flew as long as he wasn't responsible for anything that happened. Armstrong sat in front, Yeager in back of the T-33 on the sunny and warm afternoon. Both men were flowing just flying shoots and gloves. We went them to the and looked it over. Armstrong recalled And it also, I said, Chuck, let's do a touchdown and see how it goes. The touchdown and go took a place with absolutely no trouble. Neil landed ram wheels over the surface, added power on, took off. The problem for Armstrong came next. When Yeager told him, let's go back and try it again and slow down a little more. Okay, we'll do that, Neil agreed. So we landed a second time and cut the power back and slowed down. And then I could feel it is starting to soften little bit under the wheel, so I added some throttle and then it settled some more and I added some more throttle. Finally we are at a full stop. Full throttle, and we started to sink in. Armstrong related. Chuck started to chuckle. Slowly, he got laughing harder. When we when we came to a full stop, he was just doubled over with his laughter as Armstrong and Yeager got out of the T-33 on Air Force pickup truck. Immediately drove up to them. The driver came out and he had a chain, Armstrong remembered, so we put it around the nose gear and hooked it up the truck and tried to pull the plane out of the mud unsuccessfully. We couldn't do it. So we just sat there on the wing. Neil took 8 millimeter film of the plane stuck in the mud with an inexpensive movie camera. The mishap took place at 3:30 in the afternoon with the sun dropping behind high mountains to the west. The temperature fell quickly. For men wearing only with thin flying suits, it soon grew cold. Any ideas? Eager climbed. He cast Armstrong with Neil grimly shaking his head no. Sometime after 4 p.m., they heard the NASA's Goonie bird approaching. Because Edwards had not heard from the T-33, NASA radioed Mickey and Donna to fly over to the Smith Ranch and take a look. Bill Donna recalled the ribbling that Neil took a Yeager and that Neil did not rise in the bait. It was clear to both Donna and Mickey, as it was certainly was to Armstrong, that Yeager took delight, Neil embarrassment in his autobiography and in interviews. Yeager expressed harsh sentiments towards Armstrong, culminating in this option. Neil Armstrong may have been the first man on the moon, but he was the last guy at Edwards to take an advice from the military pilot, to which Neil was responded freely on the occasion of the Smith Ranch. I did take his advice.